Remembering Black Wall Street. Black History Tribute.
Black Wall Street. And it was the wealthiest black community in America, where black men and women came to pursue the American dream. It boasted black-owned banks, pharmacies, grocery stores, movie theaters, restaurants, churches, newspaper publishing, law offices, a bus company, its own school district, where the average student wore a uniform with a suit and tie, a business college, a hospital with an entire black staff, and an internationally acclaimed surgeon. Black millionaires, which Greenwood was known to have had more millionaires residing there than the entire United States combined. And of the only 2 airports in the state of Oklahoma, one of them was for the half-dozen private airplanes owned by its black oil tycoons. To top it off, the minimum wage and living standard of a resident of Black Wall Street far exceeded that of the average white citizen of Tulsa. But on May 30th, 1921, all that changed.
Hey bro, did you know that on May 31st, it marks the 100th anniversary of what is believed to be one of the worst incidents of racial violence in the US? Well, here's some history. A white mob attacked Tulsa, Oklahoma's Greenwood district, killing hundreds and destroying over 1,000 homes and businesses. Now, most of Tulsa's African-American residents lived in the Greenwood district, a thriving center for black commerce, also known as Black Wall Street. The neighborhood was about 40 square blocks, and it had its own newspapers, several churches, its own library branch, and a ton of black-owned businesses. So what set this horrific incident into motion? It all stemmed from Dick Rowland, an African-American shoe shiner, and Sarah Page, a white elevator operator, being in an elevator together.
It's the roaring 20s. The country is flourishing. Some African-American communities are prospering, like the residents of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A remarkable Baptist pastor named Solomon Sir Jones is the pioneering filmmaker. His footage was lost for more than 50 years. Jones captures the bustling life of Greenwood, which could be any American small town. But Tulsa's whites don't like what they see. In May 1921, after a black man is accused of assaulting a white woman, a white mob rampages through the city. For a night and a day, they loot and burn Greenwood. A Fox News crew captures the only surviving footage. It is the bloodiest racial massacre in American history, leaving nearly 300 dead.
Well, so they didn't start to burn and pillage until they decided, you know, well, all right, we have to teach them a lesson. The Ku Klux decided we have to teach them a lesson. So actually, we as children didn't hear any noise or any shots the night of the 31st of May. But on June 1st, they began to systematically destroy neighborhoods. And they had airplanes dropping things down on people's houses, and they had made up their minds to clear the entire area of black people. So most of the people fled. When they saw houses burning and the streets behind them, they left. But my mother was determined not to flee, and she poured water on everything she could put water on, trying to make the house safe so it wouldn't burn. But the first thing they did when the militia came was to take all the men and they took my 8-year-old brother too to a place, bullpen or someplace where they were holding all the black men. And we didn't know, because we lived on one side of town and they lived on the other, we didn't know they weren't doing the same thing. The militia, you have to obey the militia, so we thought they were locking up the non-blacks too. But it so happened that it didn't occur that way. What they did was to disarm and lock up all black men. And then they said to the mob, there's nothing out there now but women and children, so you can do whatever you want to do. And that was when the real terrible things started to happen, because they would invade your house. And my mother had a very strong will. She was a Tuskegee graduate, and she had been trained to teach. But she decided, well, we have to eat no matter what's happening out there in the world. So she had 3 triangular pots that you could put 3 pots on one gas eye on the stove. So she was cooking, and she made biscuits, and they were in the oven. Well, when the crowd came in to pillage and burn, they were infuriated, because here's this woman cooking cream of wheats and making applesauce and cooking biscuits, instead of being terrified and running from us. So I think they thought they had to teach us a special lesson. So they first took the food out. Of course, the children are cowering under this big oak table where my mother had put us. And then we saw them take our food out and throw it in the dirt. And then they came back and got the biscuits and took them out and stomped them in the dirt. And then they came back in to destroy whatever they didn't want to take with them.
Survivors and their family members have been trying for years to get what they called the justice of their lifetimes for what happened more than 100 years ago. In an 8-1 ruling, the Oklahoma State Supreme Court upheld a decision made by a Tulsa district judge last year. That ruling said the Tulsa Race Massacre survivors' grievances, although legitimate, did not qualify for reparations.
If they were going to do reparation the easy way, it would have already been done.
Our partner station in Tulsa spoke with Willie Sells, owner of T's Barbershop, the longest-standing business on Black Wall Street since its rebirth.
Those people that were here suffered a terrible loss, and I think it's affected the city down through the years.
It's estimated up to 300 black Tulsans were killed, and over 30 blocks of the city were devastated by a white mob in 1921. The few living survivors sued the city of Tulsa and others in 2020, seeking reparations for the trauma they lived through. The city and insurance companies never compensated victims for their losses, and the massacre ultimately resulted in racial and economic disparities that still exist today, the lawsuit argued.
We're hoping and trusting and praying that the city, the state, or somebody in Oklahoma would give reparation to those survivors.
I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921. The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not, and other survivors do not, and our descendants do not. When my family was forced to leave Tulsa, I lost my chance of an education. I never finished school past the 4th grade. I have never made much money in my country. State and city took a lot from me. Despite this, I spent time supporting the war effort in the shipyards of California, but most of my life I was a domestic worker serving white families. I never made much money, but to this day I can barely afford my everyday needs. I'm asking that my country acknowledge what has been happened to me, the traumas and the pain, the loss, and I ask survivors and descendants to be given a chance to seek justice, open the door. For 70 years, the city of Tulsa and its stream of chambers told us that the massacre didn't happen, like we didn't see it with our own eyes. You have me here right now. You see Mother Rannell, you see my brother Hughes Van Ellis. We live this history and we can't ignore it. We lost everything that day, our homes, our churches, our newspapers, our theaters, our lives. Greenwood represented all the best of what was possible for black people in America and for all the people. No one cared about us for almost 100 years. We and our history have been forgotten, washed away. This Congress must recognize us and our history. For Black America, for the white Americans, and for all Americans.
Uncle Red, do you have real hope and faith that the U.S. government will ever compensate you for what happened with
Yes,
Black Wall
I
Street?
believe so.
Really?
Yeah, I believe it's gonna happen. Yes.
You've been alive way longer than me. So why do you believe in the white man, but I don't?
I believe it's some good people and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
I hang on the good side.
Okay.
Yes. People are not bad. It's good people and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with some people right now. It's pretty bad people. See, I met Joe Biden. I met Vice President Harris. Back to mine, I was in her country, in India. I've served in India, and that's where her family's from. So, yes. So
in World War II, he was in Burma.
Burma, also in Burma.
All black battalion.
Mm-hmm.
All black.
Shot down enemy aircraft. They were thought to be all killed, but most of his troops survived because they was fighting for their life.
Mm.
How many times were you bombed, Uncle Red?
Huh?
How many times were you bombed?
I bombed twice.
Wow.
Bombed when I was 4 or 5 months old. Bombed when I was 20-something years old.
Mm.
Wow.
I didn't think it ever happened in my life, but it did.
Uncle Red was a baby.
I'm glad I survived all of that. I'm a survivor.
Mm. He was a baby during the Tulsa Race Massacre. Mother Fletcher was 7 years old, so that's why he said he was bombed as a child, as a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
And how many presidents have you met, Uncle Red?
I met most all of them. I didn't get a chance to meet Obama.
Really?
I went to a we call in Colorado we call a honor flight. They fly all the veterans from Washington D.C. for 3 or 4 days. And the group I was with, I didn't get a chance to meet Obama.
Really?
Hopefully
one and only black president?
Yeah, now hopefully he sees this and get a chance to meet him.
But why haven't any of those presidents helped, move on getting compensation?
They took us all around to what servicemen did, what country we was in, and took us around to the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, all bases. And the main trip was to go see the changing of guards at the cemetery. That was the main issue when they took us up there. So they pull a veteran out and let him come pin the thing on the unknown shoulder, the wreath. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Turn me around, I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up the freedom way. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around. Oh, turn me around. Oh, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up to freedom. One more time.
grandmother, Randall. Such an honor to meet you. You're 108? Wow. And so you were 6 when the riots happened, or the massacre. You were 6 when the massacre happened.
Yes, I suppose I was. I was very young.
Yeah.
So
my grandma raised me, so it was like sitting with her and getting a first-hand account, and to have the opportunity to do that little interview, and I know not everybody's gonna get. It was humbling. You and my grandma were about the same age. She was 5. I just wanted to thank you for surviving and for being here and for sharing your energy with us. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
We're grateful for everything you've lived through.
I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here.
I'm joined now by the woman you just heard describing the horror her great-grandmother went through more than 100 years ago. Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, it is an honor. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Simone. So good to see you again, and congratulations on this new show.
Thank you very much. I was very excited to talk to you today because I think more people need to know and understand the history of the Tulsa Race Massacre, to understand that communities like Greenwood are not some fantasy. These were real places that people lived, worked, toiled, and made lives. The Greenwood neighborhood, it was known as Black Wall Street, and it was described as a little refuge from the Jim Crow era. There was a big oil boom in Tulsa, and black folks, they were getting rich because of it. And your grandmother was a part of that. Tell us about your great-grandmother.
Absolutely. Well, you are spot on. Greenwood, Black Wall Street, was one of the most prosperous economic enterprises for Black people. Get this, in the grim days of Jim Crow, we owned hotels, doctor's offices, theaters, grocery stores, libraries, schools. I mean, you name it. We didn't have to go outside of our community for anything. And my great-grandmother and her family owned a restaurant right in the heart of Black Wall Street, Greenwood, until it was burned to the ground on this very day, May 31st and June 1st of 1921.
You have been a part of the group trying to get reparations for the survivors and the descendants. And one of those reasons is because this wasn't just some random bunch of men on a rampage, right? This was Tulsa leaders who helped organize and took part in this. Tell us where you are in that struggle for reparations right now.
Well, absolutely. Tulsa leaders, Tulsa's police department, the state of Oklahoma, the Tulsa Development Authority, so many entities that were responsible for what took place in our community, our beloved community of Greenwood, state-sanctioned violence. And until this day, there has been no atonement, no repair, no respect, no restitution for what took place. Just yesterday, Simone, I was at Oak Lawn Cemetery just praying for the victims who lost their lives, the mass graves that were excavated a few months ago and reinterred, because right now we're trying to figure out what happened, as you stated. And on May 2nd, just recently, we finally got a little bit of light. Our good friend and attorney Demario Solomon Simmons filed a lawsuit last year in the name of a public nuisance claim, stating that the massacre caused a public nuisance in this community, and what happened 100 years ago is continuing to take place. If you look at the wealth gap between whites and blacks, it's wide. If you look at our community, we live in a food desert. Our schools are school-to-prison pipelines, and I can go on and on and on. And so the judge ruled that we can proceed with discovery and bringing forth evidence, and that has been truly historic.
Yes, evidence in that reparations case. Well, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, we appreciate your time today. You are a modern day freedom fighter, and just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Did y'all hear about the millionaire? I guess he was a millionaire in Saratoga Springs that gifted $3 million of his own money to the remaining survivors of the Tulsa massacre, Black Wall Street massacre. He said that he was sick and tired of the government trying to run the clock out instead of giving it reparations. he said as a white community, we should look at the advantages that we've had because due to racism. So he decided to gift each family, which was 3 remaining survivors, $1 million each. Why can't these billionaires that have had the upper advantage than people of color do this? What they're going to do with that money? And people may disagree with me, and some may agree with me. A lot of people think reparations were a handout, but the Japanese got reparations, Chinese got reparations, Jewish got reparations. There's so many other cultures, people of color who've received reparations except for black people of slavery. You don't have to agree with this, but I believe if everyone just took accountability for their ancestors and you know, give us what was due. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. You know, there were some people that were still enslaved until like 1947, something like that. But you know, I just wanted to put that out there. I commend that man for actually stepping up to the plate where the government failed to do so.
Held for weeks, survivors also recounted seeing black bodies dumped into the Arkansas River and into mass graves. Well, today, 2 of the last living survivors of that massacre flew to Washington to share their stories and demand justice. Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, known as Uncle Red, is 100 years old, and his sister, Ms. Viola Fletcher, or Mother Fletcher as she's known, is 107 years old. Listen to what she experienced during one of the darkest moments in U.S. history.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead.
The night of the massacre, I was awakened by my family. My parents and 5 siblings were there. I was told we had to leave, and that was it. I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not. And other survivors do not. And our descendants do not. When my family was forced to leave.
When people are playing this game, they're learning real history as they're going through it. So on our board, we have some of the real businesses that existed from 1897 all the way up to 1970. Right? A lot of people also don't know that when Tulsa Black Wall Street was bombed and destroyed in 1921, they rebuilt it within 4 years. Right. So by 1925, Black Wall Street was on and popping again, right? Almost bigger than it was before. And then it really took 1970, 1971 with urban renewal for it to then unfortunately end. But long story short, yes, sir. So there is an amazing book called Black Wall Street Riots to Renaissance by Hannibal B. Johnson. Right. He's released 2 books now. He also has a book that was released in 2021. I think it's called 100 Years, Black Wall Street Massacre, something like that. But the book that we read was From Riots to Renaissance by Hannibal B. Johnson. And in that book, he has some of the businesses that existed during that time. So that was a really good kind of launching point for us.